Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Goldmine YouTube channel. We've got a new segment for you. We're calling this, what are we going to call this, Mine Wars? Should we call it that?
No, we should never call it something like that.
Why?
Mine Wars, I think that's just not a good name.
Okay, fine. We'll
The Minefield, maybe?
Yeah, the Minefield.
Minefield. There we go. This is why Sourna's my unofficial manager.
Holy Mine Wars.
All right, so welcome back to the Goldmine YouTube channel. Those of you know I'm Sam. We got Joe Kane, our whatever what do we call you? It's like executive producer.
There's a new title every week.
Yeah, and then we got Sourna Jr., one of the first guests on the show, coming live from London.
Indeed. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so yeah, we're going to talk some NBA. The Portland Trailblazers made a very massive run to the 8th seed against one of the hardest schedules remaining in the bubble. And Damian Lillard was named unanimous bubble MVP. And Joe and I post on my Instagram story when players I like do good stuff. When LeBron goes off, when Dame goes off, when Steph goes off. And so I put up just a normal post after Dame went for like 51 against somebody. And Joe said he was overrated. So naturally, that has sparked a week and a half long debate that we need to settle on air. So we decided to bring Sourna in because Sourna has the best basketball mind of the three of us. And we're just going to, talk about it here on the Minefield segment of the Gold Mine. And, Joe, you want to talk about why you think Dame's overrated. Go ahead.
Well, where do you want to start? Do you want to start on why you should have been a unanimous MVP for the bubble?
You're gonna say Booker. I mean,
you can't just go 8-0 and not get a single vote. He is the only good player on that team other than Aiden. And, he was the main reason they actually had a chance of getting into the playoffs, which was just ripped from them when the Nets couldn't get a single point to get the Trailblazers take them down.
Dame carried the Blazers the entire way and hit a half quarter, right? He had 41.
He got
42.
All of this talk started in the last 3 games of the bubble. Mm-hmm. All of this, oh my gosh, he scored 61 or something against the Jazz in the 6th seeding game.
Yep.
And then he scored 52 against the Mavericks.
It was 60. I think it was 61 against you guys. Just so you know.
Oh.
Yeah, your defense, bro.
He got good media coverage during that. But what is the point when those games were basically useless for the other 2 teams who were already locked into their seeds?
So what I'll say to that, one, Dame averaged 30 points a game in the regular season if you factor in the bubble. They had the hardest schedule statistically in the bubble. And yeah, you can say some of those last games were meaningless, but the Nets were actually playing and a lot of those teams were playing. And also Dame throughout the year, throughout his recent career, has excelled when games are on the line. Game 5 of the Thunder series is the perfect example. That is a Paul George and Russell Westbrook team carried by talent. And Damian Lillard pretty much gave them a punch in the gut the entire game. He had 50 points, a step back 3 from God knows how far out against Paul George, and he excels when pressure's on. The Memphis game, 31 points and 10 assists without even really passing, without even shooting in the last 8 minutes. And that game was a big one with the game on the line. I think to claim that it's 3 games of chatter and nothing else, this isn't like TJ Warren going for 50, 30, and 30 in 3 bubble games. This is a guy who's been doing it all season consistently. And I think it's actually absurd to call him overrated when he's been doing it at such a high clip for so long.
Yeah, so I guess my first thing about the only 3 games or whatever is the bubble, right? There's only 8 games to begin with. So if you're saying that he only excelled for 37.5%, then okay, I'll give it to you that 3 out of the 8 that they needed, he excelled in and scored 50 plus in 2 of them. It's not a small enough sample size. It's in fact a pretty big one. I'd say that. I'd also say that honestly, yeah, he looked gassed against Memphis. He did not look nearly as good as he did earlier because of all of the work he put in to carry his team. But he did, as you say, still got what he needed to in order to get his team over the line, being perfect from the free throw line. And honestly, CJ McCollum put in a big result. If you want to give Devin Booker MVP love as opposed to Dame, I'm not really going to fight that argument too hard, but I would say that it was about getting in the playoffs. It was about leading a team to doing that. And the Suns definitely started multiple steps back, and going 8-0 is a great accomplishment. But you can't overlook how far back the Blazers had to come back, factoring in a new team as well with all the injuries they had. So I think Damian Lillard is a very deserving MVP. And if you really like Devin Booker as opposed to him for the MVP, I'm not too opposed to that.
Also, I think it's a semantics issue, right? Like, Dame even straight up said, I'll take the playoffs. Booker can have MVP. Like, I think for Dame, it's an issue of winning games that count. And you want to talk about games that don't count. Devin Booker played in a bunch against a bunch of teams that weren't fighting for a lot. I mean, you look at the Clippers game that he hit the buzzer beater, and the Clippers were pretty much locked into the 2. They won Joe was talking about
that game was close. I mean, didn't Kawhi Leonard
okay, and so was the Nets game, and so was the Mavericks game, and so was every game Dame went off in. Like,
but if the Trailblazers are actually playing for a spot still, and
the Suns were as well. The Suns played meaningful games all the way through, Joe.
But if the other teams that they were playing were already locked in their spots, and the Stars were playing for 10 minutes at each game, then what makes those games? Yeah,
again, that same logic would apply to the Clippers when the Clippers were already locked into the 2, Joe. It's not like the Clippers were going all out for the last 5 games of the bubble once they realized they were locked into the 2 regardless.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if you do want to say that the Portland had a bad loss against the Clippers, they did. Portland barely played anyone, and Terrence Mann, was playing the most minutes. If you want to hold that against Dame, and that's the be-all, end-all for you, then I think it's just not taking into account as much as you should about a bubble, about the big games. But yes, you can't deny that the Clippers absolutely handed the Blazers a bad loss.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I guess what I'm saying though is one, you can talk the MVP debate all you want, but you look at what Dame did outside the bubble with a depleted team. I mean, at the beginning of the season, when everyone was healthy, ESPN analysts were putting the Blazers maximum at the 6. Some were saying they were going to miss the playoffs entirely. And yes, I know the media always sleeps on the Blazers, but that was before all these guys got hurt. And when Zach Collins went down, Nurkic is obviously out for most of the year. Then you have some other injuries spring up as well throughout the season. And Damian Lillard was really the only constant. He carried his team, kept them in contention in the Western Conference. That is brutal still. And then the second they all get back is when they start performing. I mean, they were performing before they got back, but the second they all get back, Dame, really showed how good he is. I mean, he was already insane without them, but then he carries this team now that everyone's back and maximizes the amount of weapons he has and pretty much powers them into the 8 and loses 2 games in the bubble. I think you have to look at the full work rate over the season and over the past couple of years to really see how great Damian Lillard's been. And it's really harsh to call him overrated because he allegedly didn't deserve MVP.
So, if you want to get out of the bubble, then you can do that now. But the Trailblazers are an underrated team. I'll give them that. But Dame Lillard is overrated. I mean, Trailblazers by far had the best guard duo this season. After they had the best in terms of scoring. That is, Dame Lillard came in 4th before the bubble in scoring, and then CJ McCollum came in 12th.
Mm-hmm.
So
you think they're a better combination than Russ and Harden?
And the fact that no one's giving CJ McCollum any credit is just wrong, because he's obviously playing a big role in the Trailblazers, and with Dame playing with 50-point games and such, he doesn't deserve the hype, but because he's doing that, he's getting all the media attention and pulling it away from the other stars of the team, aka CJ McCollum.
Well, Joe, for starters, none of us are saying that McCollum doesn't deserve credit. McCollum hit a couple of the biggest
But you're
shots
saying
before
that
the one goal line. But
Damian Lillard's pulling his team to the
I
playoffs, and
mean,
it's not
Joe,
just
without
him.
Damian Lillard, this team would be in the. Without Damian Lillard, this team would be in deep trouble. CJ McCollum is a phenomenal player. He's not a number one option on a championship team. He's a good number two option. And also, I mean, you look at the numbers, even with CJ McCollum on the roster, Damian Lillard leads the league in offensive win shares, and he's second in the league in overall win shares. Like, you can't punish a guy for having a fellow star beside him. And Damian Lillard has shown that despite having a star beside him that also puts up numbers, he is hanging 50 on guys. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, yes, it's great that CJ's another option, and it's great that he's a fantastic player, and we can't take away from him. But you can't say Dame's overrated when the numbers just don't indicate that. The numbers clearly indicate he's one of the most valuable players in the league. He's got one of the highest value over replacement player like marks in the league, and win shares per 48 is higher than all the other guys you told me that you thought were better than him. So I don't really understand how you can say that because CJ's good, Dame's overrated. I understand why you can say we shouldn't discount the fact that CJ is a fantastic player, yes, but I think it's foolish to say that Dame is overrated because CJ's good.
It's not saying Dame is overrated because CJ's good. It's saying that Dame is overrated because of your last argument, which was he didn't have a good supporting cast.
Aside from CJ McCollum, Nurkic was out for most of the year. Melo was considered washed before he wound up in Portland, and
But
I don't think he was washed. But
he was
a
good fit in Portland, and he proved that. He got 15 points per game.
Okay, I mean, yes, but again,
he was a significant contributor in the fourth quarter.
Compared to other playoff teams and compared to a lot of the teams you're talking about, it isn't really as good. I mean, you look at the top teams in the West, they have a far better supporting cast. And my thing is Damian Lillard didn't have that supporting cast for most of the year because at one time or another, at least one or two of those guys was hurt.
Sure. I mean, in terms of the supporting cast of Portland, they can really score the ball, and it helps from that standpoint. I would say that Dame is the reason. He's the architect that makes everything else fit. You give him shooting and a big who can set a screen. You can even give him two bigs in the case of Zach Collins, and they can run high-low because they can space one in the dunker spot off the pick and roll because of Dame. He opens the floor up in that way. So yes, offensively, they do have a good cast. I think a large part of it's because of Dame, but man, they can't get a stop. And part of that's because, don't get me wrong, like part of that is because of Dame and CJ.
Yeah.
Like neither of them are effective at the point of attack in terms of guarding really anything. And Nurkic isn't much of a rim protector. Collins is getting there, but he's still learning. And Melo, it's just not his game at this time of the year. So it depends what you mean in a supporting cast. If you're looking at in terms of getting points and scoring, yeah, it's a good supporting cast, but it also means it's a lot of pressure because if they're not getting more than 2 points of possession, they're probably going to lose.
And that's my thing, right? Without Damian Lillard, they're not getting 2 points of possession. Like you can have CJ McCollum, he's a fantastic player, but he's not going to carry a team to a consistent. He is not going to hang 50 consistently like Lillard has done. I mean, and it's not like Lillard's hanging 50 every night, but like Lillard is putting up numbers that quite frankly CJ wouldn't be able to do on his own. I think Lillard also makes everyone around him better. And I think if you took a lot of those guys off the Trailblazers and put them on a different team, they might not be as good. I mean, you've seen it with Melo already. And I think I'm not going to disrespect CJ McCollum. I think he's a fantastic player, but do I think he'd be as good in like, I don't know, like Oklahoma City? Maybe. Would he be as good in a lower level team like Phoenix? I don't know. I think like Sourna brings up a good point in Dame being the architect of that offense is that he draws so much attention, and you saw it late in that Memphis game. Everyone caved on him, and it left space for CJ and Melo to get open shots. And CJ did create more off the bounce than Melo, but Melo's literally just camping on the arc with nobody on him because three guys stunt whenever Lillard drives.
Yeah, I mean they run a lot of CJ. And part of it is Portland just does really good stuff. They run really good action, and a lot of that for CJ. So I'm not discounting him at all, but I think it comes back to the argument of it doesn't make Dame any better or worse from it. I can kind of see your argument, Joe, of he's not getting enough love. He probably isn't. I mean, against Memphis, he really needed to hit clutch shots in order for them to win it in a very tight matchup. But I don't think that has much to do with I'm confused as to what it means to Dame's value that CJ's good.
There's one last argument we've been having this week, Sam, and it was Damian Lillard being in the top 3.
Yeah, I think he's objectively a top 3 point guard.
Okay, can you define in what terms?
So we're going to do this as in recent performances.
Because I'll say this right now. I agree, top 3 point guard of the season, mainly because a lot of point guards were injured.
I think it's. I mean, look, it's a hard category to define, but I'm saying top 3 point guard in the game right now. So that means Steph is included. But I mean, what do we say in the game? As in, you evaluate them based on the last couple years. I mean, look, then Steph, I think, is a better player than Dame. I know that some people might even debate that, but I think Steph's had more playoff success, and part of that's the people that have been around him. But I mean, you watch both of them; they look unstoppable. But Steph consistently looks more so to me. But we're looking at point guards. We'll rule out LeBron and Giannis because both of them are. I mean, they played off ball in their career. We can put Doncic in there. Booker, I wouldn't put in that category because he is considered a shooting guard by most. He plays off ball with Rubio. And my thing is, I mean, the other guys you've named, like to me at least, you've named Westbrook, Doncic, Paul, and Irving. And I mean, if you want to put Harden in there, if you want to put Harden in there, you can. But Dame's still a top 3 because the rest of those guys you named aren't better than him, in my opinion.
Okay, so Curry, Harden, let's say top 2.
I'll give you those.
And then you want to put Lillard over someone like Doncic who can actually play a bit of defense.
Yeah, well, you look at the stats. One, Doncic is considered defensively very, very shaky.
I said a bit of defense. I said a bit.
Okay, look, Doncic. If you want to talk defense, Doncic turns it over more than Lillard by a mile. Doncic shoots a worse percentage than Lillard from 3. He's got a lower VORP and a lower win shares for 48, despite having arguably a worse supporting cast than Dame at full health. I mean, the numbers show Damian Lillard is a better player at this point. Do I think Doncic will surpass him? Yes, I think Doncic is an incredibly talented player. But right now, I mean, yes, he's had 2 pretty solid seasons. His rookie season was a little shakier than this one, but has he really done enough, especially in the playoffs, to be considered above Dame? No.
Because
considered he's played one playoff game.
Exactly. One playoff game where he had a great game. Don't get me wrong.
And he literally broke the record for most points in a debut for the playoffs.
Yeah. So look, you're gonna say one game as a reason why he's better than Dame. Dame dropped 50 in a playoff game, and it was Game 5 in iced Oklahoma City. Like
you brought up the playoffs though. You brought up the playoffs.
I did bring up the playoffs because when he played for the Mavericks last year, I mean, I didn't see him carry his team to the playoffs. He had a great season.
As a rookie, that's the standard now? As a rook, you have to carry your team to the playoffs?
Dude, all I'm saying, right, is it's hard to put Luka Doncic above Damian Lillard after 2 seasons of play. Especially when he didn't make the playoffs in his first season. And that's the only way I would objectively say, yes, he's better. Because in his first season, he would have straight up carried his team. But I mean, he's the 7th seed in the West. He hasn't been able to beat anybody consistently in the top 4. I mean, his team had an opportunity to climb in the bubble, and they remained stuck in the 7th spot. And like, I don't know. You can cite his supporting cast or whatever, but Damian Lillard brought his team up.
Right. Okay, but I mean, Joe, do you want this? You're a Mavs fan.
So no, you got this. It seems like you want you got to say something. So
yeah, I just don't. It's just totally unfair shots at Luka to make your argument. I'm not sure I agree with you. I'm not sure I disagree with you. To be fair, but okay, if you want to talk about the playoffs first of all, which was one of the points, I don't think you can criticize Luka for the fact that he didn't make the playoffs as a rookie. So I mean, yes, like Dame
that's only. I'm not saying that I'm criticizing him for that. I'm saying that. Yes, he's a good player, but you can't objectively say he's better than Dame unless he accomplishes something that is incredible, because that's how good a player Dame is. And my also thing is that the numbers just don't back it up. You look at the field goal percentages, you look at win shares, you look at VORP, you look at the fact that his supporting cast is arguably
that's
worse.
Different. I mean, that's different. But yeah, it's like, let's get to the supporting cast point and the raising your team out of the bubble versus the playoffs. All right. So to start, the Mavs were in a higher position to start and for most of this year because they had Dwight Powell with them. They could defend in large part because of Dwight Powell gives them switchability and gives them added depth off the bench, excuse me. And I also think this conversation is a lot different if he upsets the Clippers yesterday and maybe Kristaps doesn't get ejected. That's a whole different argument. We'll leave that there. And yeah, of course, I mean, part of the reason Dame was able to lift his team up was because of who they were around, right? It's a completely different story going from 10 to 8. You're legitimately lifting from a worse place with worse teams by definition, as opposed to trying to lift yourself from 7 past Oklahoma City, past Utah, et cetera, et cetera. Do I think Dallas really missed a shot? Yes. But to say that it's more impressive that Dame was able to lift his team and you should criticize Luka for not, I just don't think that makes any sense. If you want to say Dame's better, there's arguments for it.
That's the gist. What I'm more saying, Sourna, is you look at the numbers and you talk about that. And you look at them, and I literally just said, yes, you lose Powell, and yet he has arguably a worse supporting cast, and all of the numbers that indicate value above replacement player, win shares per 48 are lower. Then you look at the fact that, right, Damian Lillard has had spectacular success. And I know that it's unfair to say, like, look, yeah, Doncic has only played 2 seasons. He's played 1 playoff game and really didn't have much of an opportunity to make the playoffs last year. But my thing is, you can't objectively say Doncic is better than Lillard when Lillard's numbers look better, and the fact that Doncic hasn't done anything extraordinary to overcome that. That's what I meant more by the playoff argument. If he had brought his team in his rookie season to the playoffs, that's a different conversation we're having. But his numbers look worse, and he hasn't done anything super extraordinary in terms of success on the big stage for me to say that is comparable to Lillard or like comparable based on career trajectory. For me to say he's a better player.
I'll say one thing, and then I'll let you go, Joe, since I am holding you, and I'm sure you've got stuff to say. I would say leading the best offense in NBA history is a pretty spectacular thing. That's all I got, Joe.
If he's a 7 seed, it doesn't matter to me. That's all I'll say.
Dude, I feel like you're just trying to attack me personally because I'm a Mavs fan. But okay, but if you look at Dame's career in his first and second season, did Dame pull his team to the playoffs in his rookie year?
No. But I mean, that's again a fair point. But we're not talking about career trajectory. We're talking about who is good in the here and now. And right now, Damian Lillard is a better player than Luka Doncic, in my opinion. I'm not saying that Damian Lillard's had a better career arc. Damian Lillard jumped big. He was considered a very, very talented, good player. And honestly, Doncic at this point in his career, in my opinion, is better than Lillard was. But my point is right now, I think Damian Lillard is a better player than Luka Doncic. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that the career trajectory is better.
But the playoffs require so much perspective and context that it's unfair to judge Luka with that in his first 2 years. If you want to argue Dame's better now than Luka is now, you can, but that's a different argument, and it requires a different way of measuring it than did Luka lead his team to a championship as a rookie?
Well, again, my argument is more built on the numbers, which show Dame's a better player, and then you say the only way to overcome the number difference is to do something crazy. And look, I know leading a good offense is great and all, but his team hasn't won freaking games. They're the 7 seed in the West.
If you want to talk about winning the Blazers, the Blazers,
again, more injured throughout the year, and quite honestly, Damian Lillard in the big games he needed to win, he won them.
Kristaps and Luka both had injuries this season. You can't.
Luka was out for maybe 8 games.
He was out for.
Nurkic was out an entire season.
And yet he's playing good in the bubble, and
great. I mean, that's great to see. But again, my take here is that when you look at what Dame has done over the past couple of years versus what Luka has done, and the numbers and the win shares and all of that, you can talk about supporting casts, you can talk about everything, but win shares and value above replacement player are based on individual situations, and Dame is higher than that than Doncic is. And Doncic, there's arguably a larger drop-off talent-wise. That's what I'm saying. And win shares, if Dame has such a better supporting cast, in theory his win share should be lower because it would be more divided evenly among the team. You didn't do anything to basically negate the fact that Damian Lillard's numbers relative to the rest of his team and relative to Luka's relative to his team are better.
Sure, just going after a guy that has only played one game.
I'm not going after him. I'm just saying he hasn't done enough to pass Lillard right now.
Yeah.
I'd say this, though. I mean, sure, if you want to – or Joe, do you have something? Go ahead if you got
No,
something.
no, you go.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go with the win shares and all of that, sure. Like, fair enough. I'm honestly not sure who's better between the two. I'd really have to think about it. But I like those are – we're not just talking straight, like, who's more points, who's more rebounds, whatever. It requires some context. I think Dallas already asked Luka to do more than Dame does. I think the way that the systems are. So I think that the above replacement, yeah, like Dame, as you said, he has a better numbers. But I do think it's actually going to be different if you put, say, I mean, JJ Barea is not a replacement player. I mean, he's had a very good career. But if you put a replacement player in either of those situations, I do think it actually ends up being more harmful for Dallas because of the way they run their system as it is for Portland. I mean, Dame's just so skilled at this point. I think, listen, Luka will get there. The fact that it's arguably in the second year means there's no doubt to me that Luka will go over that throne, 100%. Especially because of the size factor. I mean, that really helps from Luka's perspective. But yeah, if your only argument is the numbers, then you need to break it down a little more. From my perspective, I think, Dame, really is a better shooter at this point. Luka just has been a little inconsistent in that regard. This year, he can really make some amazing shots, and that step back, I think, will be a really lethal weapon, a la Harden. And I think overall Dame does have the edge, but it is really close.
Oh, no, I'm not. And we're up in the upper echelon here, but Joe's argument is that he's overrated. And I mean, he named 4 other guys that he put above him. And I personally think that he's a top 3 point guard. And most of the people I've spoken to agree with me. Also, even if you were to take Harden out of this, because technically he's a shooting guard right now because Westbrook's on the team, I wouldn't take him out of it. But I think it wouldn't be a debate. And Joe named Westbrook, Kyrie, Chris Paul, and who else did you name? Was that the 3?
Okay, hold on. I gotta go. But you finish this out and have fun. I still don't think he's top 3.
Okay.
I mean, he could definitely get there if he actually, worked on his throwing the ball more, rebounding, and
he's like 6'2", right? He's not 6'7" like Doncic.
Okay. Steph Curry gets more rebounds in a season than he does, and he's.
Oh, he just left. Okay. Anyway, the other points I was going to talk about was you look at other guys. Joe named Doncic, then named Chris Paul, who has less assists despite the fact that his game is based on assists and mid-range jump shots.
I think a large part of that is the tempo of the two teams. I mean, Chris Paul really does love to assist and the mid-range jumpers, but the Thunder are actually a pretty slow team.
Yeah,
compared to the Trailblazers. So that might be a function of more possessions, but it is splitting hairs. Dame is a very, very good passer.
Yeah, and I thought Dame was. I think prime Chris Paul is better than Dame, but right now Dame's better than Chris Paul in my opinion. I don't think it's. I think you could make a debate, but I don't really see it. He said Kyrie, and we all know what Kyrie's done to Boston and Brooklyn. I don't even need to look at the numbers to know what's happened there. You look at Boston just being better without him. And and then also Westbrook, he said, which look at Game 5 of the Western Conference quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Last year.
Do you want me to break those down? Are we done? Do you have
questions? If you want, we're probably running lower on time. I think the Doncic one's probably the closest. I gave Dame the edge because, right? It's hard, right? Doncic hasn't had the opportunity to do it on the big stage, but I watched both players recently, and it has just shown to me that Dame, in clutch moments, has looked bigger to me.
Yeah. Yes. I would agree.
And I think if it's that close, you need to look at that. You need to look at what they've done in recent memory, and that's what. And when you're seeing Dame bring his team to the Western Conference Finals, and I know he had a better supporting cast than Luka, and then you look at what he's doing when it really matters versus Doncic kind of being unable to get them over the hump in a game they really should have won last night. I don't want to attack him for one game, but again, he has not as many opportunities to come up clutch like this, and that's fair. But if he hasn't had that many opportunities, and you give the benefit of the doubt to the guy who has had the opportunities and has converted.
No, for sure. It's when you're picking hairs that close, the clutch factor is a real part of the conversation. Especially, because I don't default to the fact that players are clutch. I default to the fact that Dame is indeed clutch. He has 2 walk-off playoff shots that span 6 years at this point. He definitely knows how to lead a team and just has that X factor, those intangibles that all those scouts love to talk about. Luka very well could, and he actually has had some really clutch moments in Real Madrid and playing for his national team. But no, he hasn't done that yet. He hasn't had the opportunities to show that yet in the playoffs. I just think it's more than a little unfair to criticize him for not doing it when he hasn't had the opportunities. Do we know he has that skill? No. We know Dame does. And so that's why you can give him the edge.
And that's what I was more getting
at. Like a man losing to the Clippers without his second best player. Come on, give him a break.
And then, and that's what I was trying to get at. Like I said, you're right. You can't punish or criticize somebody for not having the opportunities, but you also can't put them above the guy when the other guy's done it. And that's kind of what I was trying to get at. Well, if we don't have anything else, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to have to cut this episode down a little because we went on longer than I expected. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate. I think that the Dame is overrated claim is absurd, but I can see where it's a legitimate debate. I personally think he's top 3. Other people might not. But it's an interesting topic. Let us know what you think in the comments if you actually care enough to comment and you watch this long. And we'll see you on the next one.